Radio 104.7 and 93.5 all over northern Colorado. I'm so glad to get to be with you. A little information about the show today. We thought, let's talk truth. It's my perspective on some news topics. And this one, today we're going to be talking about vaccinations, the pros and cons. We've got a lot of kids going back to school, even in adults. There's some pieces in here that you're going to love as well. And I've got some great emails. In fact, George, it lit up, didn't it? This is a subject matter I had no idea that was going to create. We're going to do another show regarding this as well, because we're not going to be able to get all the emails in, and I want to read some of them for sure. I have Angie Sickler is with us, and Angie is a parent who chooses not to vaccinate. I'm going to have Jamie Hornecker, and she is a professor of pharmacy. Of course, she supports vaccinations, and so we're going to get quite an interesting feel for these two women and the way they think, and some of their opinions are, and mine as well. And then something so fun at the end of the show. We've got the great Kahuna on the show, and of course that's Matthew. And Matt, is he not special to do this?
He's very special. He's so special.
He's so special.
And I do a morning show here
yep.
at Pirate from 6 to 9 a.m.
Yes, and I had the pleasure of meeting Matt and the Kahuna, everyone calls him that. But he had his lifestyle changed. Huge lifestyle change with medical issue. And I cannot wait to share that with you. I'm going to keep you in suspense. You're going to love it. All right, so to start out, Angie first. Thank you for coming. Yeah, I know. It's so cool that you came in, and you're a mama. And how many children do you have, Angie?
I have 5 children.
So you have 5 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And your perspective, I'm going to let you share when you were reading about this that kind of push a button in your life, and why.
Yeah. So just like all good moms do, I take my kids to child checkups, and when I was doing that, on about the time that my youngest, who is now 11, at the time I think she was 2, and her older brother 8, and I'd taken them in for their checkups, and along with the checkups they were getting their shots. And I was looking at the information, because you sit in the doctor's office, there's really not much else to do, yeah. So you just sit and you read things. And so I was reading the information that they had handed me on the vaccines that my kids were going to receive at that time. And I remember looking at it and reading it and wondering, these numbers can't be right, because the numbers that I was looking at were telling me that there's more of a risk of death or a permanent injury from the measles vaccine than the measles itself. And those
now you read that in a doctor's office?
I read that in a doctor's office, and I decided to go home and look up some more information just to find out if that was really true or not.
Now, how old was your child at the time? Because I know you have 5, but was this an oldest child at that time?
This was the
youngest.
First?
Oh, it's the youngest.
2-year-old. I had vaccinated.
That's my question. So you vaccinated the other 4,
yes.
And you're sitting in a doctor's office and getting a load of some new information.
Yeah.
All right, you go home.
Yeah, and I went home and I started Googling. And I know a lot of people kind of tease us anti-vaxxers that all of our information comes from the internet, but quite honestly, most doctors that go through medical school have to look up all kinds of things on the internet. So using the internet as a source is not a altogether weird thing, as long as you check your sources and make sure that you're getting a verifiable source. And so in doing all the research that I was doing, I discovered on several sites, several research papers done by people proving the dangers of vaccines. And then from then on I was, we're not doing that again.
So it's sort of like you learned something. I was talking to Kathy earlier, and she has 5 children as well, and she was sharing with me that from the first one, very different now from the 5th one. In 10 years' time, every 10 years things change, and we're going to do some fabulous information on that at a later time. But okay, so you learned, you had the 4 all vaccinated, and this 5th child, you're saying no vaccinations.
Right.
Has she or he been ever vaccinated for anything?
It's a 11-year-old girl, and she was vaccinated through the age of 2. So she did get all the baby vaccines, but from then on I stopped vaccinating her, and honestly, she hasn't been sick very much at all. She rarely gets colds, flus. She's just her immune system is a tough bird.
It's a tough bird. But did you notice the difference with the other little birds
Yeah. The oldest kids, especially because the three oldest are from his, mine, and our sort of a situation.
Got it.
So the first two are my stepkids, and they got vaccinated. They had all kinds of pharmaceutical meds for all kinds of things, ranging from depression to bug bites, and they just took so many medications. And just seeing that and seeing what they were going through, because they were sick all the time. And comparing that with my youngest, who doesn't take pharmaceutical meds for anything and doesn't vaccinate, she's totally fine.
Top 3 reasons why you would not vaccinate. Can you do that?
Sure. So the first reason would be just the fact that I looked at that information piece from the doctor, and it was showing me right before my very eyes, because as parents we have to do kind of a risk assessment for our children.
Sure you do.
Because there are some things that are risky. You go outside, you might break your leg, but you keep them inside all the time. No, the risk of breaking your leg is still very little, right? So I'm doing risk assessment as I'm looking at this paper, and I'm going, okay, well, what it's telling me here is that there's a greater risk from getting the vaccine than there is from getting the measles itself, because the measles itself is quite a benign disease when you look it up. The symptoms of it are just they go away on their own. I mean, usually. So there's a very small chance of death. In fact, I looked up the numbers from the CDC. From 2003 till 2015, there were 0 to 6 deaths. It's kind of flip-floppy, with some doctors agreeing 6, some doctors agreeing 0, but very few cases of measles deaths in the last 12 years there. And then from VAERS, which is an association, government association, they reported that there were 694 injuries and 98 deaths. 98 deaths between the years 2003 to 2015. So I'm doing a risk assessment, 0 to this other number, this 98. So I'm going, okay, if there's 98 deaths from the vaccine, but 0 or maybe up to 6 deaths from the measles itself, what's more dangerous, the vaccine or the measles?
Right, that was the question that I had, and you already jumped on it. What sites did you do your research from?
Yeah.
So,
and I looked things up from the CDC, because when you do any kind of research for any kind of opinion that you want to form an opinion about a subject, you want to do research on both sides. Yeah.
Yes.
You can't just go, oh, I believe in this, so I'm only going to read these things, because that's an unfair assessment. So I'm looking at stuff from the CDC. I'm looking at stuff from PubMed. I'm researching articles there, but I'm also researching articles from Dr. McCullough, Suzanne Humphreys, people who are doctors but who are anti-vaccine, or at least anti-vaccine schedule, the current schedule that they have. And so with all of those voices inputted, I was seeing a trend that CDC was full of corruption, unfortunately, at the highest levels, and they've had some whistleblowers that have come forward, and it's all about money and power. And I hate to be that weird conspiracy theorist, but that's really what it comes down to. You follow the money.
Follow the money. What did your doctor say? Did you say anything when you left that day? Did you say anything to the receptionist? Did you make any comments to them?
Honestly, I was so much in shock at seeing that paper and because it's like having all of your beliefs just crumbled into a pile of rocks, because you've believed for so long that doctors know what's best, the medical community knows what's best, and I should do whatever it is that they tell me to do and have complete faith and trust in them. And then something like this, and your whole world just kind of comes crumbling down. Like, I thought I could trust the FDA, I thought I could trust the CDC, I thought I could trust these government organizations, and they're letting me down. And it doesn't mean that there's corruption all over the place in these organizations. It just means that there's corruption higher up.
It's making you pause.
Yeah, it's making me pause. And I don't even blame doctors, honestly. They're being taught this in medical school. And medical school, the board of the medical school is made up of pharmaceutical reps. So of course they're going to be pushing curriculum for pro-vaccine, pro-pharmaceuticals, because they're...
Big money.
Yeah, they're vaccine makers, they're pharmaceutical reps, they're the people who are pushing for it. So of course they're going to push for doctors being taught in school that vaccines are great, and honestly, doctors don't even know much about the vaccine. If you ask them what's in it, they don't know.
Well, do you understand that you can, first of all, opt out in Colorado? It's not like that all over.
It's true.
You can. Mothers that don't want to vaccinate have a choice.
Yes.
I don't know if they're aware of that or not, so it's something to think about.
Yep.
You realize that there is a certain mercury. It's an organic substance, but it's mercury and it's not good for us. That's in the shot. It's shelf life.
Yeah.
Every shot has a shelf life.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to talk to pharmacists about that because, and every pill we take, you can get a generic pill, you can get the deal pill, whatever. And the only difference is the carriers, the basic product that they hold that pill together with.
Yeah.
And I believe that some of the generics are done with a cheaper grade of a binder, if you will.
That's
And it just depends on how your body can adjust to whatever binder, whatever product you're putting in your body, and God knows we don't know.
Yeah.
And I do know that this mercury thing is huge, and I do also know that you can ask your doctors, I don't want this shot if it has mercury in it, I want the one without. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, you can certainly do that. And the thing about mercury and thimerosal,
Thimerosal.
yeah, is that it is true that we do have to have preservatives and adjuvants in our vaccines because
They wouldn't live. The shelf
life wouldn't be very long. Now, the interesting thing though is when you start looking into what adjuvants and what preservatives can be used in a vaccine, you find out real fast that there are others that can be used that are safer alternatives, but they're more expensive. And so this is what it comes down to is, again, it's a money thing. They want to keep more of their money, and they know that they can't be sued. Did you know that?
No.
Vaccine makers cannot be sued. There was a lawsuit in the 1980s, a bill that was produced in the 1980s in Congress, and it was produced on behalf of the vaccine makers. They came to Congress, some of the congressmen, and said, hey, we're, as pharmaceutical makers, we're going to have to back out of making vaccines because we're getting sued so much that we can't, we're not making a profit, so it's not worth it, so we're going to drop vaccines. And Congress said, oh, whoa, you
God
can't do
forbid
that.
you do
Yeah,
that,
we'll save you. And so they made a bill, and it passed, saying that you can no longer sue a vaccine company no matter how awful the adverse effect is.
See, we just lost control then. That's something right there that I need to research a little more. We'll put a little, I'm already hearing Kathy in the background going, I know where we're going with that one. That's very interesting, Angie. That bothers me greatly.
And it should bother all of us.
It should bother
everyone.
Nothing should be above the law. And we're kids. We're vaccinating newborns. All right, here's my other thought. Have you thought about not getting, like, say, a vaccination? They do the mumps, rubella, what's their three?
Mumps,
measles, rubella, all
Mhm.
three one time.
Yeah.
Why can't they stagger those a bit? Have you thought, anyone in your little group, I'm sure you share with other moms, that rather than going in and having 3 shots or 6 shots or 8 shots at one time, that they're staggered out, and it'll help the child, and then deleting this mercury from our vaccination.
Oh, sure, yeah. I have some mom friends who have done staggered schedules, and I think that that's definitely a smarter move. Just me and looking up the stuff that I've looked up, I've decided it's just not worth it. There are some things, like people will say, well, there's mercury in the food you eat. None of it's true. Some of the food that we eat does have mercury. What they forget is that when you eat it, it passes through all of your natural filters. You've got God-given filters inside of you, like your digestive system, that are meant to filter those things out. And when you inject something directly into the bloodstream, you're bypassing all of your natural filters, and it messes with everything. So that's why I choose not to inject anything, unless it's blood for a life-saving, emergency thing that you have to do, or some other kind of drug that's life-saving, emergency has to be done. That I understand, but other than that, don't inject anything. You shouldn't.
I'll tell you what. This is a lot to ingest. And our whole idea behind this show is to educate, support, and hopefully give our listeners a solution. And you can find one in this. At least we've opened eyes. That's all I want to do.
Right.
I'm not trying to destroy the pharmaceutical business of this country.
Oh, no.
That is that they have a place. They eradicated polio. I mean, you've got to think about that. Or you have some thoughts on that?
Here's the thing about polio.
Share that.
Okay, so there's something that a lot of people don't realize.
And then we need to go to break. But go ahead, share that.
And you can't really see this, so I'm going to describe what the graph is. There's several graphs on here that show several different diseases that have vaccines. The one that you were talking about, the polio, polio begins a sharp decline right around 1950s, 1954.
It peaked.
1950. Yeah, it peaked and then it fell around 1950. And then the vaccine was introduced in 1956. So the vaccine was introduced after the sharp decline of polio. And the interesting thing to note about that is that just as people would ask that I not jump to conclusions, I'm asking people not to jump to conclusions and just assume, well, the vaccine is the thing that cured polio because that's what it looks like. When you look at the underlying causes of polio, polio is transmitted through feces, and as gross as that is, back in the 1930s, early 1940s, they didn't have proper sewage systems.
They didn't have proper hand washing.
They didn't have proper hand washing, clothes washing, anything
Any
washing.
of that.
There was just no cleanliness. I mean, when you decided to defecate or pee or anything like that, it was in a bucket and you threw it to the streets. So no wonder people were getting sick with polio. It's
And every other
feces.
disease.
Right, and so when they started putting in proper sewage systems, I think it was mid-1940s, late 1940s, that's when they began to see this eradication of polio, and it was simply because of the fact that we've got proper nutrition now and sewage systems. That's
No,
it.
it's a big help. And well, the same thing with smallpox,
Mhm.
all the other diseases that we've had through the history. All right. I have to tell you, it's informative. I enjoyed visiting with you. I hope you come back.
Thank you.
I would love to have you back. And any last minute thoughts? We're going to go to break, and then we'll have commercial, and then we'll bring on our pharmacist.
Okay.
And it'd be interesting to listen to her.
I would just encourage everybody that there's nothing wrong with doing your own research. There's nothing wrong with doing your own reading. Don't let a doctor or any other medical professional make you feel like less of a person just because you read things on the internet and they got theirs from medical school. You're still getting information as long as you're getting it from a valid source, and it's still good information.
It's worldwide. 7 billion people get information from the internet, and I think there's a few doctors in that.
Oh, yeah.
I do. But I have to tell you, I'm nervous right now because I just did a thing on the Google because I want to make sure that the internet is not biased.
Yeah,
And,
I'm sure.
and there's going to be some safety checks for that. A woman shared an email with us, and I'd like to get this. And before you go, I'm going to do this real quickly.
Okay.
It's a little lengthy. I'm going to try to shorten it up, but I like it. Yeah, it's Marlene, and Marlene, I'm not going to give you your whole name, but thank you for giving it to us because we're going to send you a little note. But anyway, I'm a breast cancer survivor, and I went through treatment to cure the cancer. Of course, she had chemo radiation, but it left her with a AML leukemia, and with leukemia, they killed every known natural antibody in her gut and skin, and she received a stem cell transplant, and then the procedure went on. What she's saying is she lost her immunizations, every shot, everything she'd ever had. All the things that protected her as a child and as an adult, she lost it. And I'm 9 years out now. I recently got my last 4 inoculations, but up to this point, for me, to be around children that are not vaccinated is a huge risk. I always walk in fear. I'm still not comfortable with it because I'm at a huge risk of fighting off any disease I come in contact with. So I'm for vaccinations. I think in my situation I need it. I have 4 grandchildren, and I even have a grandson that had Asperger's, and I'd still vaccinate, and I'm pro vaccination. Thank you, Marlene.